What's up, guys? Carlton here for episode 2 of Carlton's Corner. Looks like we're low consistency now. I'm trying to make sure this happens at least once a week, maybe like on the weekend, like a Saturday. If I can get this thing out at least once a week. But I apologize for my inability to use technology. Like, I don't know what's happened in the past couple years, but I don't know how to make a legit podcast like on iTunes. I haven't quite figured it out yet. That's why the first one was posted to YouTube, because I know YouTube. I've always used YouTube. I know how that works. But this mysterious podcast thing still eludes me for the moment. But eventually, I will get them up in iTunes and loaded correctly, instead of this jank ass way of loading them haphazardly onto YouTube. But I will figure it out in time. And also, so I used Windows Movie Maker to make this, and I remember Windows Movie Maker being like a reasonably easy program to use, but good God, the new one is just like unusable. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's so counterintuitive to do things. It took me forever. Like the first Windows Movie Maker, you set it down, right, and there's a slider. It's extremely simple and easy to figure out. You click things and they do what you want. But now there's no more timeline, and it's terrible. So I need to invest in some better software as well, because this stuff ain't cutting the mustard for me. But anyway, Carlton's Corner episode 2, just my new little podcast thing I'm doing about talking with a emphasis in games, but it doesn't have to stop there. I could talk about culture. I could talk about media, and not just extending beyond games, music, and all that other stuff. And that's what I hope. I think it's going to be an organic experience. I think if people like what I'm doing and like what I have to say, and that maybe they could give me suggestions, on what they would like to hear about. I would love to do that. So that could be y'all's. My request of you for this episode is just leave me a comment on what you would like me to talk about, and I'll see if I can lend my expertise or lack thereof, whatever the case may be. But I wanted to talk today about really. So the first episode we talked about my sort of story, my beginnings in optic gaming and my relationship with Hex and all them, and I think. This one I'd like to cover a little bit a broader topic, and about essentially what the implications and the progress that video games have made on culture, like the fact that it went from sort of this subculture to now it's mainstream. I kind of was sort of able to witness that happen in the past. Well, obviously in my lifetime, but I would say in a very dramatic way in the past 5 years or so. Because I remember when I was growing up, the first game system I played was like a Super Nintendo, and I didn't really like it that much. And then Nintendo 64 came along, and that's when I really started playing a lot of video games. And then obviously PS1, PS2, GameCube, Xbox, and so on. But in those days, there was not a lot of I guess video games were considered nerdy or uncool in a way. I mean, it was something, or they were sort of considered immature-ish, something a bunch of kids would go. It wasn't really, the number of adults who played video games was not always as high as it is now, because the games were just viewed as a totally different thing. It was like a toy. It was something that children did, and occasionally adults would do it. And so some, things like that. That was the perception. Whereas now you have mainstream movie references to games. You have lots of movies being made about games, which isn't technically new. That was done in the 90s with Super Mario, and it was horrible, by the way. If any of you youngins have never seen the live-action Super Mario Brothers movie, you really need to watch it. It's awful and great at the same time. It's just there's Yoshi is like a velociraptor, and John Leguizamo is Luigi, and Bob Hoskins is Mario. And Dennis Hopper is Bowser, but he's a weird Bowser with a creepy slicked back hair and a trench coat. It's good. If you guys haven't seen the original, the live-action Mario, you really need to check that out because it'll change your life forever, and it'll change your perception of Mario forever, I think. But getting back to what I was talking about prior, it's these sort of things where like video games have become accepted as a mainstream recreational thing and as a cultural thing as well, and especially competitive gaming like MLG and stuff. I remember as early ago as like high school, like that stuff was super uncool. Like that was, you were considered a straight up nerd if you played like LAN tournaments and stuff like that. It was super uncool. But now that's sort of like there's now this glitz and glamour. I think they're importing like the Korean model because in Korea like competitive gamers are treated like celebrities in a way, like they have groupies and make lots of money and stuff like that. And I think that model is slowly coming over here because I don't well, I mean, if you just look at Optic, right, like their rosters, you don't have like the stereotype, the stereotypical guys who play lots of video games, you know, staring and sitting in front of the computer, like really fat zits, you know, all that stuff. That's not what they are. That's not what like a lot of the competitors are. You know, they're all regular guys, or what you could be portrayed as they're all just regular dudes who happen to play video games, not necessarily gamers. And I think that's a good thing. I think that that can alleviate a lot of people's you know, I mean, you play video games, it's something you really enjoy, and you don't want to have you know, be viewed culturally for the things you enjoy doing. So I think it's good that it's getting some more momentum and getting some mainstream acceptance. And it's also good because like now the competitors are the athletes, which I don't know if I would go so far as to call sports like or even really sports. I mean, it's just like, and I don't really consider them athletes. I mean, they're not to knock on what they do, but I don't know if that's really the right term per se. But in any case, they're actually it's becoming a viable lifestyle for people. It's becoming sustainable. It's becoming profitable. And the way I read the market right now is that it's only gonna grow. Really, there's not really gonna be. I don't foresee like a crash in this thing. There's lots of people have put lots of money into making this a big thing with lasting power, which is good. I think that's good for the culture. And excuse me, I'll drink some coffee real quick. Which I think is good overall for for video games in general, because the more money that goes behind something. Now, I feel like you probably also run a risk there with the culture being diluted and becoming being overburdened with commercialism and like movies have suffered a lot because of the money that's put behind it, the money that's put into advertising. I think that can really do a lot of damage, which I think it's interesting. We haven't really seen too much in video games. We haven't really seen things like product placement. Not that it doesn't happen, because it does, but it's just not something you really see a lot of. But I think the more money that gets behind it, the more you'll start to see. The more, I guess, like Hollywood blockbuster like formula is how I see it going. Because I mean, I've already seen this with the Call of Duty games. I mean, essentially, from a single player perspective, they really release the same, and even a multiplayer perspective, they release the same game every year, and everyone buys it. I refused, like when Ghosts came out, I refused to buy it because I already played. I feel like since Modern Warfare 2, it's just the same thing over and over and over again. And I ended up getting Ghosts anyway because somebody gave it to me as a gift, so I do have it, but I refused to buy it because I was so over like being like marketed to and just counting on my loyalty to the franchise I get. Because I remember I played Call of Duty 1 on PC like in 2003. That's how long I've been in the game, in the Call of Duty world. Anybody who just played it that long ago remembers the expansion pack, United Offensive. Get at me on the tank, son. I'll rip you up. But I feel like that's. I mean, back then, it was a new, fresh, cool game that had a little bit. It had like positive. I think it was the first like real playable multiplayer like World War II game. Like the servers were huge and lots of people, lots of good games, always easy to find a game and stuff like that. But now it's just sort of like if you fast forward to now, it's just how do we? I mean, we've already it's about perpetuating Xbox Live subscriptions and getting people to play online, and they just they give out this like craptastic, ridiculous, in my opinion, story that like the story like the campaigns in those games are just so dumb. Like there's no character development. It's not interesting. It doesn't like. So yeah, it's fun to like go around and shoot people for a little bit, but after a while, like I wouldn't mind a little bit of story, a little bit of character development, something like that, a little bit of meaning in what I'm doing. But I mean, I guess it is cool to see like Russians parachuting onto Wall Street and stuff like that. But it's just those are just set pieces, you know. After a while, I want to actually see a story. That's why I really liked Red Dead Redemption. Like that's probably my favorite story in a game. I don't know. See, I don't think I've played enough games to call it the best video game story ever, but I think it's definitely up there because it's like the Rockstar always takes time to actually write the games. Like Dan Houser really like is a good writer, and he knows how to write scripts and stuff. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the themes. You know, that was a game that actually spoke to me that I really enjoyed. And you know, if you guys want to, maybe that could be a good idea for a show. I could dig deep into the story of Red Dead Redemption or the story of something else or Halo or something like that, and really sort of give my literary analysis of what happens in those games. But yeah, so I bringing it back to Call of Duty, I just got over. I feel like they weren't giving me for like the same price tag. They were giving me less and less content every year. It's just like television shows, right? You'll have a television series like Walking Dead. I think is a good example. The first season of Walking Dead was great. You had Frank Darabont. They had a high budget, and then but that's what TV stations do is they'll get people hooked on the first season, and then they cut the budget in half and they double the season length. So like the quality of the shows are just going to go down so bad, like so horribly. And I think it's similar with Call of Duty. Is like the more they spend more money every year, but it's not on development. They spend more money on marketing and ad placement and stuff, because that's where you know, that's how they move the games. That's just like I know GTA 5 when it came out had some ridiculous, like, its ad budget and marketing budget was like way over its like what the cost to develop the whole game was. Like I don't know if it was as little as half, but it was something crazy like that. Like it cost twice as much to market the game as it did to make the damn thing. And I think that's, I don't know. Those are the kind of things I talk about when as it expands, it's going to get more and more. I mean, thank God GTA 5 was a good game, but I think that, you know, Rockstar has a good brand, and they wouldn't really. I don't think they would ever put out crap. But Call of Duty, on the other hand, every subsequent one to me just gets, and the stories just get more and more ridiculous. I mean, the first Call of Duty had some historical context. You know, it had some cool stuff in it, and then you know, it was all sort of based. It kind of at least had one foot in the lane of reality. But now they're just so, and it was historically accurate-ish and things like that. Now they're just so over the top, like. As much as I enjoyed seeing the Eiffel Tower like come crashing down in Modern Warfare 3, like that shit's a little, I don't know, a little ridiculous to me, a little over the top, and especially like Black Ops really upset me because like I've been wanting for a really long time for there to be a good Vietnam War game, and I mean which I guess the closest thing I've really gotten to that is Black Ops, but it was just so ridiculous. Like they would have weapons and stuff that were it was anachronistic and mixed up periods. It mixed up, like, it put the wrong weapons in the wrong period, and I don't know, that stuff kind of, I guess I'm kind of a nerd, but that stuff kind of bothers me after a while. So, you know, I'm really ready, I guess, for a fresh franchise. I wouldn't mind seeing Call of Duty, like, at this point plummet to the depths of no return. Like, I wish nobody would really play it anymore, so that way we could move on to an exciting new intellectual property with new, more dynamic, you know, features, instead of just we all buy the exact same game every year because everybody else does, you know. So, but that being said, I guess that would be like my negative assessment of the growth of games. You know, they're starting to get commercial, and they're creating formulas for what will and won't sell. But also, I stick with my my initial assessment that I think overall it's a good thing that like video games are becoming a much more accepted, and indie developers and all that stuff, like it's just growing so much and becoming way more accessible. So I think that is a good thing. So anyway, guys, I will go ahead and close it out here. This has been Carlton for Carlton's Corner, episode 2, and I'll catch you guys later.